Hello everyone, this is Darcinovia here. This is my review of the second book of the Wheel of Time series, The Great Hunt. Now, this took me a while to get through considering it's a very thick book, in case you're wondering how thick. Unlike something like this, which isn't even close. So it took me a while to get through. Now, what do I think of The Great Hunt? I thought it was excellent, just like the first book, though I argued that it exceeds the first book in many ways. It's not as long as the first book, but it builds on top of what the first book establishes, in the Wheel of Time. It builds on the characters, getting more depth, and they don't feel as stereotypical from certain archetypes like they do in the first book. This book expands upon that. Rand al'Thor is not your typical, protagonist you would see in a fantasy series. He's more, he is more relatable, and unlike others, he's not completely accepting towards his destiny right away. And this book is him forcing himself to come to terms with it. Also, in this book, he's trying to fight the madness that's taking him. If you guys are not familiar with the lore of the Wheel of Time, men are not who channel the one power have a tendency to go insane. I don't know why yet. I haven't gotten that far. Don't spoil it for those who've read the series before. And Rand has to actually deal with that fact, and also he has to deal with one of his friends, Mat, possibly dying if he doesn't get a hold of the dagger of Sogor Logith. If you're familiar with what happened in the last book, Mat tries to steal some treasure, and on accident keeps the dagger he stole from Sogor Logith, and something major happens to him, which nearly kills him. And in order to cure him, they have to have the dagger so that Aes Sedai can remove the curse. I don't know what's going to happen with him in the next book. I have to read, but that's another thing that's going on. The horn, which is a big plot point, which they have to find in this book. It is briefly mentioned in the first one. And Rand and has to find it along with everyone else who's with his company, because the horn could be helpful to them in the final battle. And towards the end of this book, Rand is it isn't revealed one way or another on what happens, so I'll have to read the Dragon Reborn in order to know what decision he makes towards the end of this book. But pretty much he chooses to embrace his destiny. Now, in this book also, you get to learn more about the Aes Sedai, what's the differences between a red, a black, and all the others, because they don't really get much into it in the first book, because the only Aes Sedai you see most of the book is Moiraine. Well, Moiraine doesn't play that big of a role in this book. She's only featured in a few chapters. And most of the book focuses pretty much on Rand, Narain, I think that's her name. I'm sorry if I butcher that. Egwene and a few others. So you don't really see that many Aes Sedai in this book compared to the first one. And towards the end of this book, I'm not going to spoil it. I think I'll leave it at that. The Great Hunt, in my opinion, I felt was a great sequel to The Eye of the World, and it makes me want to read more. Next time I talk about The Wheel of Time, hopefully it doesn't take as long to read as the Great Hunt. I'm going to review The Dragon Reborn. The final rating I give The Great Hunt is a classic rating. I think it's worth your time. If you like the first book, I think you should pick this up. If you're still a little skeptical, I would still pick it up to give the series another shot. I think at this point, the series is slowly, forming its own identity. It's not like those hundreds of, high fantasy novels that try to be like Lord of the Rings. This is doing its own thing, though Eye of the World is more like that, honestly. So if you're on the fence with the first book, I suggest you give the second one a chance just to see, the series actually eventually go away from those roots. I'm looking forward to reading the next one, and I'm looking forward to hearing your guys' comments or reading them, whatever. May the force be with you guys, and have a nice day.